What work am I going to do? I've been declared not able to work.
When they tell you the benefit spending is spiralling, they are lying.
On what planet does cutting that support and taking away what social security we have, security being the key word, drive us into work? So I am here because the government are trying to put through on a green paper cuts to PIP and welfare benefits for deaf, disabled and neurodivergent people.
I mean, the government is arguing that by freezing PIP, and now they're going to freeze the universal credit and capacity payment as well, they're saying that this will encourage people to get into work. What do you make of that argument?
Well, what about me? What work am I going to do? I've been declared not able to work. There's no way I can do most jobs. And another thing people don't realise is just being disabled uses so much extra energy. I'm walking with 2 prosthetic legs. I have to think about my balance and my core all the time. I'm trying to pick something up. I have to think about the prosthetics I'm using and look at them as to where they're touching. If I'm typing, I'm using a stylus and I'm putting strain on my shoulders. There's very little work out there for some of us, and disabled people who are relatively able-bodied find it really hard to work. Chances of me working, virtually zilch.
And if you could give a message to Rachel Reeves before she goes in to give her spring statement, what would it be?
The Labour government's supposed to be the government that looks out for the most vulnerable in society. I do not understand how they can be cutting things for the most vulnerable. There are so many other people who could afford to lose some money. Those of us who are disabled, we can't. And this is the only way we can protest about it.
My father-in-law, he starved to death after his benefits were cut. The system not having a duty of care meant that the system didn't have to care. It could just take his money without any consideration as to whether he was suffering in that flat, where he was. The system made the assumption that he started a job. Severe mental health, psychosis, and they assumed he started a job. This is a man that suffered for many years. He was sectioned under the mental health. The system does not want to admit to its failures. And the problem is, it didn't admit to its failures now, and it ain't going to admit to him what it's doing. It didn't admit to him then, it's not going to admit to him now.
Can you tell us about some of those deaths that have been linked to past welfare cuts, like austerity?
Yeah, well, I mean, there've been countless deaths over the years, particularly in the post-2010 years. Some awful deaths connected with the austerity years, but dating back really like 30 years as well. And people have taken their own lives in connection with PIP, with past reforms and cuts to PIP, and also the awful work capability assessment. And I'm going to be reporting tomorrow on the latest death of, it's an awful, tragic case of a man on PIP who had his PIP removed in January this year because he was too ill to return his PIP form, and he died in a state of awful squalor and destitution after DWP removed his cuts. And I'm sure many other people will feel that is something that's going to happen increasingly if these cuts go ahead.
New cuts to PIP, I won't qualify anymore probably, and many of my friends who are in significantly even more need than me, who can't work, will also be in a significantly worse situation.
They're changing PIP and how you qualify on the point system, and you were saying earlier that you're a bit concerned that you'll no longer qualify. Could you maybe explain to people who aren't familiar with the PIP system and how that works, why that might be?
So at the moment you have to get a certain amount of points to qualify, but you don't need to get a certain amount in each area. It's altogether based on your overall needs, but the way they're changing it now, someone who has lots of need in one area will qualify, but people who have multiple needs over multiple areas will then be disqualified from getting it, because you could have need support with cooking, cleaning, washing, mobility, and all that lot. If it's all in separate categories, that can then affect whether you'll qualify now.
Can I ask you about Liz Kendall's argument that these cuts to PIP, or the freezing of PIP and now the freezing of universal credit and capacity benefit, she says that this will get people back into work. What do you make of that argument?
Well, PIP has nothing to do with work. The only connection between PIP and work is that having PIP helps disabled people get into work. So that is a completely fallacious argument, and that is something that we've noticed in all the interviews from ministers and MPs who are supporting the cuts, is that every time they talk about PIP, after about 5 seconds they suddenly start talking about getting people back into work. So again, it's dishonest, it's misleading. They are lying to people about this. PIP has nothing to do. Cutting PIP will increase the number of people who aren't able to work because PIP helps people to be in work.
Can you talk about the sort of impact it will have on your staff who work in places like job centres, having to be on the front end of these cuts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our members more and more now, sadly, are sitting both sides of the desk. So thousands of our members claim the benefits that they administer. Thousands of our members claim PIP. Thousands of our members claim universal credit because they're not paid enough by the government in their day job. And what is quite clear to us is that our members are already facing an uphill battle implementing the current social security and benefit system. Further setbacks and cuts will just make things worse. It'll make it a hostile environment for those who use our services, and incidents will flare up. There's no doubt about it. We're already seeing it. Safety is a real issue for our members and our security guards in G4S right now, which is why we're in dispute over that as well. And this is going to make things worse because people will get desperate. Let's be clear about this. This will not help people. They will get desperate, and therefore they will come to quite rightly, understandably, to the department and say, this isn't helping us, we demand better. And it's our members who are on the front line facing that.
They have the evidence. They are just ignoring the evidence. And when they tell you the benefit spending is spiralling, they are lying. They are literally lying. We have the evidence. Disability benefits, yes, they have risen for various reasons connected to the NHS and all kinds of things. But the proportion of GDP taken up by social security spending has not spiraled. It is stable. So they are lying.
Why do you think they're making that argument? Why are they saying it's necessary to cut welfare for disabled people and they're not, maybe pulling other levers that they could pull?
Why are they making these? I don't know, but because disabled people always get scapegoated for cuts. It's just as simple as that. It dates back, there's a cycle. It dates back to the early 1990s and then the 2000s and then the post-2010 years, the austerity years, early 2020s again, and they're doing it again. It's every time they need to find money from somewhere. They come to disabled people without any evidence, or rather, they have the evidence, but they ignore the evidence.
You disagree with Liz Kendall's argument that cutting or freezing PIP, freezing universal credit incapacity will get people back into work?
When does cutting support or investment ever grow anything? If we're talking about business and the economy, you don't cut funds for a business to enable it to grow. You invest in it. This is about investing in deaf, disabled and neurodivergent people in the UK. So on what planet does cutting that support and taking away what social security we have, security being the key word, drive us into work?